Service your existing car with us right now,
And it's worth £500 off your next car.
yes, at Macklin Motors Toyota, we'll give you a £500 voucher off any of our brand new Toyotas when you book in for a service with our expert Toyota trained technicians.
We even have complimentary courtesy cars available, so book your service now and get £500 off any new Toyota.
Visit macklinmotors.co.uk or see us at Kennishead Road, Darnley.
Macklin Motors, the new name for Toyota sales and servicing in Glasgow.
Valid on services till 30th September. Excludes Motability and fleet customers. One £500 voucher per vehicle purchased by 31st December.
The Go Radio Football Show with MacklinMotors.com. Hosted by Paul Cooney, Stephen Craigan and John Hartson. Listen live weeknights from 5. Talking Scottish football first.
Let's go!
Rangers are going to switch off the PA tonight at 7:30 to create what they say the world-famous Ibrox atmosphere that served them so well last year on the way to the Europa League final. But tonight, it's the big one. It's the Champions League qualifier. Manager Giovanni van Bronckhorst.
Very important because you want to stay in the Champions League for the next round as well, to be able to qualify for the group stages. We're in it. First game wasn't the result we wanted. We have a home game tomorrow where we can all change it. My objective and my desire is to still be in Champions League next week.
Yep, we'll bring you the team news in the next hour, just over an hour away. Stephen Craigan, how big is this tonight?
Well, Paul, it's big for a number of reasons. Financially, of course, to get through to the next stage, I think guarantees another $5 million, gives them then a playoff chance to get themselves into the Champions League proper. But also the prestige of being involved in Champions League football. The disappointment of losing to Malmo last season. If they lost this season against Union, it would be a major disappointment all round. All that hard work from last season to get themselves into the Champions League, all the memories of the Europa League were great, but the fans, the players, the staff, they all want to be in the Champions League.
John, it's all about strikers, isn't it, in football? That's why they get the biggest bucks in football. And we saw the value of it with Martin Boyle at the weekend coming on and scoring the last kick of the ball. And for Alfredo Morelos, now not yet fit, but in the squad. Do you think he'll start tonight, John?
It all depends. It all depends how Giovanni van Bronckhorst sees it. I think he's a goal scorer. Morelos, if you need goals, you're at home, you'll get the crowd behind you, like they did many times last season. They used the fact that they went away from home in the first sort of leg of 2 game legs last season and did it very well, knowing that they had that vociferous crowd back at Ibrox, and they turned it around many times. They will have to play better than what they did last week at Union SG.
They couldn't play worse, could they?
They couldn't. They will have to improve a lot. They'll be at home. They've got the advantage of the crowd and everything else. We saw it last season many times, and you wouldn't bet against them. They get that early goal. The crowd gets up. Worry about them a little bit defensively. Union SG weren't great, but they've gone and beat them 2-0. They'd have to defend really well this evening in front of their home crowd.
0808 17 17 700. Rangers fans, give us a call on the way to the game tonight. John Hartson, who knows all about Champions League and European football, and Stephen Craigan knows all about international football. And Stephen, you followed Rangers, for BT Sport all the way last season. What do you think tonight about the lineup? There's been loads on the chat at Go Football Show. Who's going to play for Rangers? It was difficult. Like, he changed it. He chopped and changed it a bit. Where's Lundstrom going to be? There was all the chat about the goalkeeper. It's going to stay with John McLaughlin. There's no question.
No, it seems that way. And I think, when you consider the first game of the season, he played Livingston, then went to Union 4 days later and made 4 changes. Then it made, I think, another 4 changes to Saturday. So that tells you he doesn't yet know his best team, or the players he would like to be in his best team aren't up to speed or aren't fully fit, Paul. So, that sometimes comes down to the recruitment over the summer. Sometimes no fault of the manager of the club. Other clubs won't sell their players, won't give them away, trying to get deals over the line. So maybe playing catch up a little bit. You asked John the question about Alfredo Morelos. In any other game, you'd probably say he's maybe not there yet. It's a league game. We'll give him another couple of weeks. But the magnitude and the importance of this game tonight, a man who comes alive in European football, who scores big goals in big games. Fans love him, fans adore him. You can't help but think the manager has to put him. It's such a big game. 4th game of the season, it's such a big game. I think he has to play just because of the reasons I've said. However, the questions you have to ask, where's his fitness at? what kind of percentage is he at? How long can he play for? Is there a chance of a recurrence of that injury? That all has to come into the manager's thinking. And also the biggest one for me is he the best player in that position at this moment to lead your line, irrespective of what his fitness is?
What would you say?
And if the answer is yes, the manager's watched him up close with regards. He's played 26 minutes of first team football all pre-season in 5 months, which is a long time to be out. Of course, we don't know how long he's been in the training pitch for. However, strikers are quite selfish and precious, as Big John will know. They will believe, and he will believe tonight, I should be in the team. Whether he's 10% fit, 90%, he'll think
he's overweight.
I should play. Well, that's the thing. Again, we're not too sure of. However, the man for the big occasion so often is Alfredo Morelos. I think he would play. And
look at the way the crowd react to him. Ryan Kent as well, we're not sure. Is he going to play? He's under consideration. This is the manager speaking yesterday about those two players.
Yeah, well, Ryan had today he did some parts of the training. He joined us, so we have to assess him tomorrow if he's fit enough to start or even get minutes tomorrow. Morelos, of course, has been a little bit longer with us training. Had also had his first game on Saturday, first minutes again for the season. Yeah, he's there to take part in the game. If it's from the start, we just also have to assess him tomorrow. But once the whistle goes, we are ready.
John, the first goal will be crucial tonight. If it was to be for the opposition, it would probably be curtains. But for Rangers, do you think they've got to go for it?
They've had to go for it in previous games, Paul. That's what they've had to do. They've almost been quite comfortable in doing that, because it's not ideal when you've got to go back to the well all the time and rely on the crowd and rely on a great start and score early in the game like Tavernier seemed to do many times last season. And it wasn't just a one goal. I thought they hit teams with 2 goals in quick succession, like they'd score in the 13th minute, then the 16th minute. So all of a sudden the opposition are going, well, they knocked the wind out of us once, but completely took the wind from off under our sails. Is that the right saying?
Indeed.
Took the wind from the sails. The sails, yeah. So they're more than capable. I do think the longer the game goes on, Union SG will be saying, let's try and keep it as tight as we can. Let's not concede. But sometimes it's easier saying that than actually doing it, because Tavernier marauding down that right-hand side, they win a free kick. He's getting great balls in the box. Morelos, if he starts getting across people, real making it a hostile environment for the opposition in the first sort of hostile atmosphere, should I say, in the first 10-15 minutes. Teams don't like it. Teams think, what on earth have we got here? They can't get out.
Stephen, it worked for Rangers last season. You've got the stats. You were there.
Well, it is, Paul, but that doesn't guarantee it happens again. You don't turn up tonight and think, well, we've done this before, so we'll do it again. You have to go and earn the right. And as much as they're talking about turning the PAA system off, I think they've done it a couple of times, certainly once last season, and they galvanised the players. The players then have to respond to that with how they start the game. Yeah. Playing forward, playing direct at times, turning the opposition, getting early crosses in, trying to put them on the back foot to use the energy that comes from the stands, irrespective of whether it's Ibrox or Celtic Park or any kind of other stadiums you're chasing a 2-0 deficit. You have to go with that intensity. But still, as I say, you have to earn the right. I mentioned to you off air ahead of it about Calvin Bassett. It's nights like tonight that Rangers will miss him, because he could defend 1v1. He could defend in the opposition's half 1v1 and knowing he's got 80 yards behind him because he has the recovery pace. Connor Goltz and him were perfect at it in so many occasions against, maybe not so much Red Star, because it was probably Red Star the first one, Braga and Leipzig, where they had to be brave, and even Celtic in the Scottish Cup semi-final they were. So it's nights like tonight when they miss that kind of ability, individual ability to defend properly, with likes of Jamie Sands, if he's going to play, or Ben Davies is going to play, another question mark round about. But they have to try and use everything that comes with them, Paul, and they have to listen. If they get the first goal, great. I think against Borussia Dortmund they scored early, against
Braga.
Red Star Belgrade they scored early, against Braga they scored early, and against Leipzig they scored early, and it kept the momentum going. So ideally that's the plan, but they have to go and carry that out.
We've spoken about Morelos, but I think personally, John Lundstrom stays in the team. I think you've got Glenn Kamara, who was outstanding for Rangers last season in Europe. Ryan Jack, did he start the final? Ryan Jack, did he skip by the side?
He did, but he didn't
Ryan
play on
Jack,
Saturday.
he didn't play enough for last season. He came into the team late on. So he's got more than the one. It's Scott Arfield again. He's got a big player in Europe, scores goals.
Scored against Livy, start of the season.
So we talk about Morelos because we talk about strikers and the impact that they make.
Yeah.
But there are several, key positions in there this evening. Does he bring Tom Lawrence out? Does he give Steve Davis a rest because he started at the weekend?
He's got to play him surely. Yeah. Craigs, are you going to give us your team shortly? What you would do tonight? If you know it just now, give it just now.
I would imagine, well, not my team, the team I think
what you think he'll play.
The team the manager might play would be McLaughlin, Tavernier, Goldson, Sands, because Ben Davies didn't play on Saturday, which if he's not going to play on Saturday, he's probably not going to play tonight. I think he'll play Borna Barisic, just because on this occasion, and occasions like tonight, I think you need as many players in the team who have been there before, Paul, and have been over the course and have delivered. And if Rangers are going to be on the front foot and they're going to play high and they're going to get crosses in, Barisic and Tavernier, I think at this moment are probably your best two for that. Yes, he's had a few shaky moments as this season already. He's only 4 games old, or 3 games old, and you're talking about pairs. I think Steve Davis and John Lundstrom will play in midfield. I think Ryan Kemp will play off the left. I think he will play Cholak. I think he will play Cholak as a centre forward. And the other one would possibly be Tom Lawrence and Malik Tillman. Will squeeze in somewhere. I think that'll be the 11.
And Morella's on the bench to come on.
I think he will be. I mean, it's a huge decision for the manager, as I said, because of the importance of the game. But he knows and what he's like. He'll have watched him in training as much as he's buttering him up and saying he's training well. Cholak has played or started every game so far. So surely I would, the manager in his mind, I think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is quite a safe manager, Paul. I don't think he takes too many risks, which is why I think he'll go with Cholak, although I think it could be a big night for Morelos.
They need a huge performance.
Said many times before, if you are playing in Europe, you cannot have enough night, because that will make it difficult for you in the whole tie. The level we reached last week wasn't the level we normally reach, or we have to reach, to be competitive this Champions League. Our performances and our standards needs to be on a high level tomorrow, because otherwise we have to be there to have a chance to go on to the next stage.
You're on the socials at Go Football Show, and there's text coming in as well. Text Go plus your message to 87474 and 0808 17 17 700. Perfect night for football, John, or is it just a wee bit too warm? But Glasgow is looking great today.
I've been nice and mild, won't it? 7:45. Been lovely and mild. Yeah, fantastic night for football. I used to love these European nights under the lights. Even the qualifiers, even 1 or 2 qualifiers, I got knocked out of in terms of, Celtic. We 1 or 2, I can remember losing to Bâle one particular time. We had a brilliant team, but we underestimated the challenge of Bâle, the Swiss team. Christian Gross was in charge, the ex-Spurs manager. But under the lights, the Rangers fans will tell you at Ibrox, there's special nights, especially if you can go and get the right result, and it's all to play for, financially. Everything else, I just think it keeps a little bit of momentum, keeps you in Europe, in the major competition, which is the Champions League, gives them that opportunity to go and beat PSV or Monaco in the next round, over 2 legs. So they're very exciting. The midweek European nights under the lights.
This is going to be special tonight, and Rangers don't want to fall behind Celtic with that 35 to 40 million pounds. It's massive tonight for Rangers, because Celtic, they're there by winning the title and deserved it last season. But Rangers have done such good work over 4 seasons under Steven Gerrard and then GVB that the coefficient's much better. And we've got 2 teams, one in automatically and another one with a big chance. We'll talk more about that very shortly. Celtic boss Ange Postecoglou has been speaking to Celtic TV. He's hailed the environment created by his players that's allowed new signings to join with the squad so easily. So I'll talk to you about that, John. He thinks that they're coming together as a squad, and they're going to have some other bounce games in the coming weeks as well. Because it is one of the things, Rangers finished the season really well. Celtic got the title, Rangers winning that Scottish Cup semi-final. Celtic didn't then have midweek games, and some people say that was good, or others say once you're going, you get momentum, then it served Rangers well. So Celtic are going to have some bounce games to give those minutes in the legs that pundits like to talk about these days.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because it's very difficult for Ange Postecoglou to bring in the new signings and throw them into important games, because Celtic are fighting on 4 fronts. The League Cup, the Scottish Cup, the Champions League,
a month away,
and of course the League. So does he go with a weakened team? Does he leave some of his better players out? By putting the bounce games on, you give him these games. All right, they're not competitive games, they're bounce games, but it gives him a chance to have a look at these players. Not so much in front of a crowd and at Celtic Park, the big atmosphere, because you see a lot of good players in training, Paul. You only really see how good they are. Put them in front of a crowd. Can you deal with the pressure? Can you make that right way to pass when you're 3v2 and you're counter attacking? These are the quality that you see on the training ground every single day. Can you take them into a game match environment in front of a really sort of a begging crowd that want to see you make the right pass? Expecting quality. So I think the bounce games are a really good idea.
Well, it's funny, look at the team that could potentially be in the bounce game. I mean, they could finish in the top two in the Premiership.
You're going with Seagrass. You could almost give us a team.
James Forrest, David Turnbull, Giacomakis, Abada, Starfelt, Moy, Mikey Johnson, James McCarthy, Idaguchi, and who was the one I put down there? Burnaby.
Of course. And Burnaby.
So that's 11
He's
outfield
only 4
players.
million.
Sorry, that's 11 outfield players. So one of those guys is going to have to be a sub in the bounce game. Wow. So that tells you how many players. Which I think is amazing, the fact that he's saying now he needs more players. He still wants more players in, which I find astounding. I mean, you can't keep 24 happy, never mind 25 or 26, but fair play to him.
So much to talk about, because when I watched Rangers then last week in Europe and everyone kicked off the season, I think most people said Celtic to win it, but not everybody. Some people thought it'd be Rangers. The squads are pretty even, people thought. When I looked at it last week, Stephen, with Calvin Bassey away and Joe Aribo, Rangers are definitely weakened. They're not as strong as they were last year, or am I wrong?
No, well, that's naturally going to happen when you sell two of your best players. Trying to replace those right away, with the likes of Malik Tillman and Rabbi Matondo, for example, who can play in the Joe Aribo role where there's a number 10 or down the side. They're both young boys. So they're probably where Joe Aribo was when he arrived, and it took him 3 years to get to that stage. So as much as some of them are long-term projects, the likes of Tom Lawrence is one of the ones you want to come in and try and hit the ground and try and replicate what Joe Aribo had. I'm not too sure they could get a player to come in and replace Calvin Bassey, because his career was going in such an upward trajectory all over the past, 4 or 5 months of it. Sorry, the last 4 or 5 months at the end of the season. They couldn't have afforded to go out and replace him directly. So like I said, Ben Davies will be a different type of player. Jamie Sands is a different type of player, but sometimes you have to work with the finances that you have.
It's not criticism, it's a reality.
No, that's a fact.
The Rangers squad doesn't look as strong as Celtic. Would you say that is the case, John?
I'm not too sure. I think Rangers have brought in some decent players. Cholak through the middle. He's already scored. Morelos has decided to stay. They've still got Kent. They've still got the cracks of a very good team that got to the Europa Cup final last season. So I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think Celtic have brought in some good quality as well. But I wouldn't be looking at the table right now, Paul. I think both teams could. I would say it's at least 10, 15 games before you can get any sort of, make any judgment on. You don't want to be losing, you don't want to be falling sort of 8, 10 points behind. But at this stage of the season, it's all about getting the right feel. It's all about getting that. Well, Ange, we know the system, he won't change in terms of his 4-3-3. And it's all about just keep chipping away, and the players will be getting fitter and fitter and fitter as the season goes on. So I wouldn't be making too many judgmental sort of comments on who's got the better, who's got the bigger squad. We'll find out a little bit more September the 3rd. Huge game at Celtic Park, the first one of the season, the derby. We might be able to gauge it a little bit from that one.
Hey, the wise head of John Hartson. I thought you'd jump into the
changed
tackle.
It's changed, honestly.
I know,
man.
I was sure you were going to go into the
I'm
tackle
sick
thing.
of causing headlines on here. I'm sick of causing headlines, man. I'm just trying to go with the flow now.
Number 1 for Glasgow and the West is Go Radio, the football show. John Hartson, Stephen Craig and Paul Cooney.
The Go Radio Football Show with MacklinMotors.com, representing some of the biggest motoring manufacturers across Scotland.
Let's go!
Thanks, Chris. It'll be busy, obviously, on the way to Ibrox. All roads lead to Govan. 50,000 over there tonight. As we said at the top of the programme, they're going to switch off the PA system at 7:30 to allow the singing and that wall of noise. I was speaking to Richard Goff this morning. He'll be at the game tonight. A great Rangers captain. John, did you play against him, or was that just before your time? Richard Goff, Tottenham, Dundee United, Everton,
Goffey
Rangers.
was outstanding. Yeah. What a brilliant centre-half. What a really good leader of men as well, Goffey was.
Proper.
Played in the heart of that Rangers defence. Dundee United, started at right back, didn't he, at Dundee United?
I think that's right.
A young boy. Went to Spurs, played in a good Spurs team. And a great centre-half, Richard Gough, good in the air, good on the ball, looked after himself, a proper athlete. Yeah, I was a big fan of Gough.
He loved the bandage, didn't he? He loved the blood. That almost kind of geared him up. I always remember, from younger days watching Scottish football. We didn't get an awful lot in Northern Ireland. It was more English football, but any time there's an Old Firm game, it always seemed to be him and Gorham. That would have been the two who would have been stopping Celtic, and Rangers had been under pressure. He'd have been heading things. The goalie would have been saving them, God rest his soul. But an absolute warrior, Richard Gough was.
He looks as though he could still play, actually. He does, doesn't he? Fit as a fiddle. I see the ashes of Andy Gorham are now under the surface there at Ibrox. They've been placed there in the last day or two. So a really nice touch. And Richard, we spoke about him this morning when I met him in Glasgow. So
I played with Andy at Motherwell.
Yeah, of course.
He came towards the end of his career.
How good was he still?
Do you know what? His demands and his standards were incredible. Right. Even in training, if someone got a shot off and he saved it easily, he would have had to go at the defender for not stopping the shot. Just small things, Paul, where, and previously he just let the shot go and the goalkeeper saved it. He didn't want that. He stopped the cross, stopped the shot. He said, I don't want to be busy. I don't want to have anything to do. So he just drove standards. Listen, he had a good life away from football. But I'll tell you, when he came in to Fir Park and he trained and he played, he tuned in. Irrespective of what had happened previously, he was able to switch off, tune in and do the business. He was absolutely sensational and a great guy along with it.
John McLaughlin will he be busy tonight? We'll find out. He is under you're always under the cosh, aren't you, when you're the goalkeeper for Rangers or Celtic? Sure. And especially when you've got someone like Alan McGregor there on the bench. We'll give you the Rangers team news in the next hour. There's so much on the go. We'll hear a wee bit from Ange Postecoglou. In fact, let's hear him now. He was speaking to Sky and about his squad and about the depth and touching on what he was saying to Celtic TV, that they are knitting together and they're going to have some more bounce games.
Etienne's comes in and I thought he had a great game and scored a goal. Riel comes in and scores a goal. Jacko comes in. I mean, we're really big on making sure that we have a really strong environment for everybody. We work with everybody every day, and it's the level of our training that allows us to produce performances like that. And we can only do that if everyone's engaged. And they'll know they'll get opportunities. This early period, obviously, we've only got a game a week, but once we get to the end of this month, the games will come thick and fast. And they all want to be ready for that. They all want to contribute, and again, credit to them that they did.
It's mainly about Rangers tonight, obviously, as you head to the game. 0808 17 17 700. But news we brought you last night about John Kennedy, the Celtic coach. He's now expected to exit. He could be on his way to FC Midtjylland. What do you think of that, John? That he finally could be a coach in his own right?
Well, if it comes off, if it happens, because we hear a lot about paper talk and headlines and this, what do you believe, what don't you believe? It's nothing's come out of Celtic. Ange hasn't said that. My assistant manager last season, who did a fantastic job alongside me, by the way, is leaving. So I'm not reluctant. I'll give you my comments on John. I think it may be time, if Harry Kewell has come in and maybe John is looking at it. Gavin Strachan is there. I think he does more of the
stats, yeah.
Stats, behind the scenes type of thing, which he'll revert back to the manager on match days or on a Friday when they have a meeting. But in terms of John, I think he'd have picked up some valuable experience working under Brendan, working under Neil Lennon. He had a little slight spell himself. I'm not sure how many games. He's about 12, 15 games or something like that. So he'd have had a little taster of it. And maybe when he got that taster, it might just have made him think, I wouldn't mind having a go at this on my own. Not necessarily. I don't think Celtic ever considered John to be the number one man. I think the fans would have demanded a more experienced coach. Remember, Ange had won things in Japan. He managed his country, Australia.
And Eddie Howe was virtually signed, sealed, delivered.
He was. But I think John will do very well wherever he goes. I think, as I said, he's got so much. He gained valuable experience at Celtic, working with under top coaches and everything else. So I wish John well. I was at the club when unfortunately he got that injury. He would have gone on to become a fantastic player.
It was tragic, wasn't it?
Tragic.
International
playing for his country.
Shocker.
One tackle, the boy came across him and ended his career. That is tragic for a young player. So I wish John well. He's had a great run, by the way, at Celtic. He's been there for a good few years now.
It'll stretch him.
But maybe it's the right time. Time for John to go. and do well himself and show to people that I can do this, I can be a number one.
Stephen?
Well, there's no doubt when you go onto the coaching ladder, the majority of young coaches want to be first team managers eventually.
Yeah.
So John will have been planning for a chance, not planning for a chance, planning for when his chance arrives or when the moment arrives. And I always think, even as a player, when a move came up or there was talk of a move, you thought, this is probably right for me. It's time to move on. I mean, John had more moves than all of us put together. Probably,
more clubs than Jack
Nicklaus.
But
you get, John, you get that little sense of, maybe it's time to try something different or it's time to retire. You get little urges, and John will probably have got that urge now that he's had the experience. Probably ready, time for him to step out of the shadows. I don't like to say the comfort zone because he works hard at his job and he's done very well. So it's not a comfort zone, but almost to challenge himself and to see if he can use that knowledge that he's gained to go and implement it onto another team and make it happen.
So what do we know about the Barcelona player? He's not first team player. 23-year-old Alex Collado, attacking midfielder, and he's on the radar of Celtic.
Well, that position, I know Ange will always want players. I think managers agree. They're never satisfied.
Yeah.
There's another 2 or 3 weeks in the window before the end of August, whenever the window shuts. And if there's a player comes available, especially a young player from Barca, look at Jota. Nobody heard of Jota when he came from Benfica on loan. No disrespect. He played in the B team, in the reserves, had a couple of games, whatever it was. But, this young boy, Collado, winger, Barcelona, if you can get him, he'll go for him because you can't have enough real good quality. But in that particular position, James Forrest signed a new contract. You have Abada, you have Maeda who can play out there, you have Jota who plays out there, Mikey Johnson if he's through the middle or he can play out there. I don't know where Mikey fits in Ange's.
He's probably going on loan.
So is it a position that is going to, but it's another quality player.
And the manager keeps saying couple more signings, maybe 2 or 3. How much today is Jota worth? What's the 9th of August assessment of the former Benfica player?
Well, they won't sell him, but if they're to sell him tomorrow, they double what they paid for him.
Right. So that's 12 million
and obviously, look, he's got to improve. Sure. He's absolutely ripping it up at the minute. Involved in all 3 goals for Celtic at the weekend. He can score, he can assist, he can take players on, he can go around the outside, he can cut inside, he can shoot from 30 yards. He can put it on somebody's head, from wide. He's the full package right now, but he's got to keep being consistent. He's got to win Celtic trophies. He's got to win them leagues, and this is what's going to take him forward.
What you would say is there's bigger tests ahead. The Champions League will be the acid test for a lot of the Celtic players who have never been there before, and they want to go and stamp their authority in the Champions League. They want to go and show what they're all about. They want to go and showcase themselves. And Jota is going to be eventually another to add to that long line of players who have come into Celtic. Celtic have improved them, their value's increased, and they'll get a huge profit at the other end. When you think of Victor Wanyama and Virgil van Dijk and Edouard and Dembele, Christopher Ayer, for example, as well. I know he's a defender, but just that's the model. You bring them in.
Jeremy Frimpong at the back.
An incredible piece of business.
We have to be careful, Paul, how we word things, because through the week it appeared on a couple of newspapers that I actually said Matt O'Reilly was worth 50 million, which I didn't say.
No, you didn't.
All I said was if Maddison goes for 50 million, he's not, and O'Reilly came in for 1.5. He is not 50 times the player O'Reilly is. And you asked myself and Craig Moore, and I'm putting this out there, and we both said Matt O'Reilly is worth 20 million plus if you had to really maximise what you can get for him in terms of what he's shown already. So when people put in newspapers, John Hartson has put Maddison 50 million, O'Reilly, it's cobblers. It's absolute cobblers. But this is what you're doing now. We are saying Jota, what's he worth? I've said if you sold him tomorrow, I'd say double his. He might be worth more.
Sure.
Somebody might pay 30. You're only as good as what somebody's prepared to pay for you.
But also you're shopping in different markets. The English Premier League is
and we know that
is a completely different financial
Just
playground.
be careful what you're saying, Craig, because you'll be quoted.
No, but
at least they're quoting you.
Absolutely. The English Premier League is at a completely different level to where the Scottish Premiership is at. But that just shows the work that Ange Postecoglou and the staff have done, that they can go and get Matt O'Reilly for 1.5 million, and his value, like Jota will and like Cameron Carter-Vickers will, if they can, go and showcase themselves in the Champions League, That's where their value will really go on an upward trajectory, when they can do it against the top teams and they can score goals.
Van
and they can
Dijk's
affect
a
games.
perfect example for that. Van Dijk went to Southampton from Celtic. Neil Lennon recruited him with his recruitment. John Park, whoever was with Neil at the time, whatever it was it 6 million or something from?
What they bought him for? They're not buying for.
They bought him for much less.
Even less.
Sure.
And then he goes to Southampton for I think it's about 12.
12. Yep.
Then he becomes the most expensive defender in the world, and goes to Liverpool for 75 million. So what people are trying to say was, will a player ever skip the Premier League and go for 75 million direct?
Do you know why, John? Because see, like the Liverpools and Man Uniteds and Chelseas and Arsenals, the ones with the big money, nowadays they want the complete player. They would rather spend the £75 million and get it right, rather than spend 30 and they're not too sure. You know, that's the way it's going to go. I mean, look at the boy
Cucurella, 63 million.
And he went for 16 or 15 last summer. So they've now looked at him and thought, no, he's the player we want. Do we have to pay that? We'll pay it. They would rather go and get it right than maybe take a risk.
It's gone mad, hasn't it?
It's an incredibly inflated
million.
market, isn't it? It's huge now.
How much was John worth then? You know, today, what would he be worth? I mean, you know.
Well, just when John was talking earlier on about Jota putting the crosses in for people's heads, I mean, that would have been right up his street. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, he hadn't done anyway with Alan Thompson and Diggy
Aaron made him even better, Jota.
Not today, John. Not with the cream cake we had beforehand. 0808 17 17 700. John, at least they're listening. Our colleagues in the papers, and that's good that they talk about you, John. But I know the headline. It's always the headline writers. A lot of managers used to say, reporters used to say, it's not you, it's your paper. You know,
but sometimes
the headline writers.
When you feel, a little bit aggrieved with something, it's important we got the platform here to pull them up on that.
I tell you what did come up last week, big time on the social media, was on the 21st anniversary of your signing for Celtic, and that went far and wide, the number of people who watched it all over the globe. And we're on the socials, of course. Over 2 million people have tuned in on the socials to the Go Radio Football Show with Macklin Motors. It's a big night tonight. It's a huge night. I mean, for Rangers, which end they could get? Obviously, they get the gate tonight. They also get the TV rights. It's on. Rangers have the TV rights.
Well, they have the TV rights. Yep. Well, you would naturally think the majority of people who would buy it would be at the game as well.
Yeah.
But I think it gives them the chance to go out with in the UK. If anybody else wants to buy, Rangers supporters, I'm sure all over England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, who would potentially want to buy it. So, but I think, the players don't think about the finances. No. The manager doesn't think about the finances. All they think about is, how can we manipulate our way through this game tonight to make sure we're playing PSV or Monaco. Of course. It's the finance guys, the guys above who are worried about that, Paul.
So if Rangers win tonight, obviously by 3-0 or
they might
4-1, which is what Barry thought, then they get £5 million tonight on top of that. And then PSV Monaco. So it was 1-1 in the Principality last week. Let's not go into can Rangers beat them. Yeah, they could beat them, but they're not there yet. There's no point, is there, John, really speaking about that just now.
They have a job to do tonight, Rangers, and that will be the sole focus on GVB's mind. Let's go and do a job tonight. Let's perform ever so well. Keep a clean sheet. We need 3 goals, or we need 2 goals in extra time and win in extra time. However they want to do it, and we need a performance, and we have to be night and day performance-wise to the performance last week.
There was the energy didn't seem to be there. It was too slow, wasn't it? They just didn't get on top of the game. Here's the manager speaking about striking options.
I mean, his presence is there for everyone to be seen. The reception he got from the crowd, we know his strengths. We know he's capable of creating chances and creating goals, making goals. So for us, that's a very positive thing. Compare it with the last, I think, 3 months of the season. We had to do all the games without one strike. It's always easier when you have strikers in the game, also on the bench, which we have now. We have a lot of competition in all areas of the pitch, also up front. That gives me more options, and I'm really happy with the first goal of Fredo, but also from Antonio. And last Saturday, we have to do is keep going, creating chances, and that's also needed for tomorrow when you have to break defensive blocks.
Yeah, the strikers. They were the scorers against Kilmarnock at the weekend. Stephen, significant that Antonio Colak got his first goal.
Who else did he score against? Yeah, was that his first goal?
No, he scored against Livingston, but it was narrowly given offside.
That was offside. Yeah, his first league goal.
Yeah, well, it's always a huge weight off your shoulders, because when you come for a decent transfer fee and there's the expectation that you're going to score goals, Paul, then suddenly you think the longer it goes without getting one, then that pressure starts to build. Plus, he's looked at the bench and he's realised that the talisman Alfredo Morelos, who the supporters love, is back in action. So sometimes that just ups everyone's game. It just puts a little bit more focus onto the players on the pitch. They know, looking over their shoulders. It's a thing we spoke about for Celtic so often, that when you start that game, you look over your bench and you think there's someone just as good as me can easily take my place. So when you get the chance to play, you've got to go and do it. And of course, it was this round last year when Malmo beat Rangers. Yep. And he scored 2 at Ibrox. So I'm sure the Rangers fans would take him scoring 2 tonight.
How much do you take from it, John? Your first goals, what it means for a striker, because it is all about getting the goal. Because you mentioned it against Livingston, and maybe it should have been counted, but it didn't, because he was judged to be offside. How did you feel when you scored your first big European goal?
Well, that's the first thing you think about when I play for 8 clubs, and I think your first goal. You want to go into any game and make sure your first touch is right. Make sure the first thing you do it well. Whether it's go and attack a header, 1, 2, 3, go and leave a bit on the centre half, win the header, win it well, get hold of the ball, give it to a teammate, and I think when your first goal comes, you're a goal scorer. You're there to score goals, and all of a sudden, then you feel a little bit more relaxed about things. You feel a bit more part of the club. You've got your first goal very early in your new club's career. So that's very, very important. Really important for a new striker going to a club. We saw Haaland score 2. Missed a load, and he scored 2 at the weekend against West Ham. He'll feel now up and running. He'll feel now he can take any chance that comes across the box.
Top of the world, John Hartson and Stephen Craigan here. Your calls coming in 0808 17 17 700. We'll give you the Rangers team news, we think probably in about half an hour.
The Go Radio Football Show with MacklinMotors.com, representing some of the biggest motoring manufacturers across Scotland.
Let's go!
Thanks, Chris, so much on tonight. It's mainly about Rangers. It's the Champions League qualifier. Few people would have thought they'd be 2 goals down after, the magnificent performance. It's really just weeks ago, a couple of months ago, going all the way to the final of the Europa League and missing out just on penalties. If Rangers had won, then they would be in the air just now, Stephen and John, heading to Helsinki for tomorrow night's. It's the Super Cup. Real Madrid against Eintracht Frankfurt. Instead, they're playing, because they would have gone in automatically in alongside Celtic into that draw in just a couple of weeks' time, and we'll bring you news on that. John, you played in a Super Cup. I remember you did. Yeah,
at Arsenal. It was one of the first games I actually played. I started both games. I remember the first night, because obviously Arsenal won the Cup Winners' Cup in '94, and I think AC Milan, if I'm not mistaken,
was the UEFA Cup gone by then?
There were three.
It was the Cup Winners' Cup.
So it was always the Cup Winners' Cup and the
you had the European Cup.
The
Cup Winners' Cup,
2 Cup winners
and the UEFA.
It's like now we've got the Champions League winners.
But I'm just wondering
how
they decided it was the
UEFA Cup.
I always thought the UEFA Cup was a bigger competition.
The Cup Winners' Cup went against the
because they
European,
won a major trophy to get into it. Okay.
Yeah, I remember going to the club and Paul Merson that was his first game back from he had a stint in the Priory. Paul was struggling with a few different things, and the first night at Highbury we drew 0-0. I remember the back four being Baresi.
Was it two-legged? Was it two-legged back in as well?
Yeah, Baresi, Costa Curta and Maldini. And then around about 2004, 2005, this was 95.
Yeah.
We drew AC Milan at Celtic Park. Aidan McGeady, I think, made his debut. He was outstanding.
Great to hear him on last Wednesday.
Martin threw him in. He was only about 18 or 19, but he ran riot. He looked a world beater. Yeah. And Costa Curta played that night as well. So as we were walking off the pitch, he looked at me and he went, "Are you still playing?" Like, what? I was like, he was about 10 years older than me. You know, he looked so well and still had it. Still had that. We drew 0-0 actually that night, but then we lost the away leg at the San Siro 2-0. Alan Smith, I think, he'd hurt his knee or something. So I played in both games, which was a great experience.
Isn't that amazing?
19 years of age.
Wow. AC Milan against Arsenal doesn't get much bigger than that, does it?
Yeah. Well, certainly Arsenal are trying to get back to the the heady days, they're spending plenty of money. I think it's the second season in a row as it stands has spent the most money in the Premier League. So they're certainly having a bit of a.
They looked very good against Palace last week.
Have you started watching the programme?
Not yet.
No, all or nothing. I've watched the first couple. It's okay.
I'm watching a thing. People might be interested. I'm watching a program called DB Cooper. It's about a gentleman who jumped out of a plane in 1971. 50 years, he've not found a parachute, nothing, and he stole £200,000 off the government, hijacked the plane.
Wow.
And there's never been a parachute found. A DB Cooper is called. If anybody else is watching that, get in touch.
James is just checking it just now, our executive producer.
I'm watching that on Netflix. It's fantastic. By the way.
Arsenal programme, obviously Mikel Arteta there. I've only seen a couple of them, but a Super Cup final and Rangers, when you think about it, so close.
You know, it's funny because we were speaking at the top of the programme about Alfredo Morelos, and you can't help but think, having watched the game and been at it and worked at it, that I think if he had played that night, they'd have won. You know, they got through, and that's when you consider against Braga and against certainly at home or against Leipzig. There's no centre forward.
Yeah.
They had to make something work. So
he was out since February.
He was out for a long time. But just when you say that about Frankfurt, they played Bayern Munich last Friday night in the opening game of the Bundesliga season in Frankfurt, and they lost 6-1. They did, so you can imagine by that, by that scoreline, you would think it's going to be a tough night against Real Madrid.
Tonight, it's Rangers in action against Union Saint-Gilloise, I think is the full pronunciation. And that was big news for Rangers on Saturday when he came in off the bench and he got a goal for Rangers.
Well, it's very important for all of us. I mean, it's been 5 months ago since he last played a game for Rangers, so that's a really long time. You forget that sometimes, but he worked hard to be on the pitch today, and he will get stronger and stronger each game he's involved. So I'm really pleased with his first minutes. You also saw the reception of the fans, so it means a lot for all of us that he's in the squad at the moment.
We saw the importance of the strikers at the weekend, Stephen.
I just think I said earlier about the manager being a little bit safe, and he's got a big decision to make, but that language tells me that he's not going to play. And it's almost a hard one for Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, because it's a no-win situation, because if he doesn't start him and they go out, they'll say you should have started Morelos. Yep. If he does start him and he blows up after 20 minutes, they should have said, then they'll say, well, you shouldn't have started him. So he's on a hiding to nothing. That's where, as a manager, you've got to be so single-minded. You've got to know what you're talking about. You've got to understand your team and what your plan is. And I would imagine there's a plan for him to come on at some stage. Potentially, I think it's, you always talk about things being written in the stars. You mentioned Martin Boyle earlier on. Yep. Could he come on and get the winner that would see them through the next stage? I wouldn't put it against him.
I think he starts, personally. I get Stephen's point there, and his
that's the manager's. That's the manager's perspective.
I think he plays tonight for me because it's such a massive game. The crowd love him. Yeah. He's back. He's obviously proven his fitness. Came on at the weekend, gets his goal, momentum. Play him. If I was a man, I'd play him. I'd stick him in. And I also think as well that Kamara will come in tonight, somewhere along that midfield, in my opinion.
He didn't do so well last week. He wasn't alone, but he didn't. It wasn't his night.
He's a good player. They could sell Kamara. They could get decent money for him. Apparently they've had whatever big bids for him in the past turned down. But I think that bit of experience, bit of know-how from last year, he'd be looking for them types tonight. 2-0 down. Can we pull another rabbit out the hat like we did many times last season?
He's an international player, obviously, Kamara. Loads of experience.
So we're going to get the team in 20 minutes, we'll know.
Stephen Davis surely will start tonight.
Well, I'm amazed that every time Stephen Davis plays, and he's maybe missed 3 or 4 games, when he comes in, people then big him up and say, what a player. He's 37 years of age, and there's a thing in this country, I think it's supposed to be, but some players, they're more interested in age than they are ability. Yeah. And Stephen Davis's ability has never been in question. And I'm still surprised that whenever he does come in, after having, hasn't started a game this season, he suddenly comes in and he's brilliant. Well, I know him, I've played with him, I've watched him often enough, Paul. He's got the abilities. And nights like tonight, when you need calm heads, you need players to take the sting out of the game and tick the ball over, which Kamara probably could be a good shout, although I'm not too sure his best position is in that advanced midfield role. However, he has played it in big games. You need players who can look after the ball, who can take the sting out of the game, who have been in the atmosphere before, even when it's vociferous in a positive way, or it can be feisty in a negative way. These players have coped with it before. So Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, Stephen Davis for me has to play. He was bigging him up after the game, and this is right up his street.
I mentioned the age last night, and Barry and Mark both gave me pelters for mentioning it. He's as fit as a fiddle, and the head that he's got on him. So surely, John, he would start tonight. Stephen Davis, Morelos from the start as well, because the fans will give Morelos the benefit of the doubt if they can see he's not fit enough. Hardly anyone's saying it, but you could see it. He's been out since February. He's put on a wee bit of timber, as he does. But he's a mercurial striker.
Yeah, but I'm going to say again, the way Giovanni Van Bronckhorst and the sports science guys at Rangers maybe work. Stephen Davis started at the weekend. He's 37. Mm-hmm. Can he do it 3 days later? Yes, he's in great condition. He keeps himself ridiculously fit. They have other players that can come on that are itching to go. The likes of Kamara, the likes of Arfield. Yeah. They can swap and change it. For me, I think Stephen Davis, you said about Lundstrom starting, Lundstrom can be that sitter in the middle, and he drops into that back four sometimes, and then you could have, the likes of Kamara alongside him and one other. I'm not sure whether he'll play Kamara Davis in that same sort of with Lundstrom. So listen, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm a huge fan. I've bigged up Stephen Davis many times on this show. Outstanding professional, great, fantastic career. But I wouldn't be surprised tonight if they did make a change and didn't play him.
We'll find out soon in the second hour of the programme. £40 million at stake tonight. They get $5 million immediately from UEFA if they can win. Barry last night thought it would be 3-1 and then 4-1 in extra time. So he thinks that they could well score and it would go to the extra 30 minutes.
I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to extra time. But if it is the Rangers have to deal with it, they showed last night they can deal with that. I think the most important thing for them is they have to get the first goal, and it was touched on earlier. That changes the whole dynamic of the tie. You then see what Union have got defensively. Can they cope with the atmosphere? Their composure. Does it go? Because listen, Leipzig, who I thought were excellent in Leipzig last year, the minute they conceded, they wobbled. Yeah. Braga, who were good in Braga, wobbled when Rangers scored earlier on. So if they can do that and put them on the back foot, then we will see a completely different game. John, do you think Rangers underestimated them last week?
Possibly. Maybe the game came a little bit too early for Rangers in Europe. They were right up for it. It was a smallish capacity.
It was like their cup final, wasn't it?
Of these. It was full, but it wasn't one of these 30, 40,000 pound stadiums. When you go to Dortmund, you think, right, we've got a real game today. These guys are second in the Bundesliga. We expect a tough game. So straight away, your mindset is, we got to be ready for. All of a sudden, last week, a team that they've done ever so well in the Belgium league. They came up that last season from the first division, and then they really did well, in the top flight in Belgium. But, and then all of a sudden, I'm not so underestimated, but you just think sometimes if your mindset, don't know an awful lot about the opposition, you're like, and all of a sudden they get done 2-0. But also, I was quite impressed with Union SG. I thought they had some good players. I thought they could have made it, the result, a little bit more painful for Rangers at times. They could have scored 3. Rangers could have got themselves an away goal. But tonight, I swear by it, Paul, I think Rangers need that early pressure. Ideally, get a goal. Don't panic. If you don't go a goal up in the first 20 minutes, no need to panic. If it's half-time, if it's 0-0, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst will be the coolest man inside Ibrox, by the way, if it is 0-0 at half-time. He'll just say, keep playing, keep getting the ball wide, let's create more opportunities and we'll get goals. But it's important as well they don't concede at home, because 3 then makes it very difficult.
Almost impossible. And my other question to you, John, is for Union SG, they will not have ever been in front of a crowd like this tonight at Ibrox. And will that affect them, do you think?
I think it can. I think if you haven't experienced it before, but then again, you could have a situation where they'll embrace it. They'll think, well, do you know what? This is an incredible crowd. They'll look at it and go, wow. For a lot of them, it'll be the first experience at this level in front of a crowd as vociferous as you get at Ibrox. And it's up to Rangers to, they'll be nervous, and it's up to Rangers then, don't disappoint them. Put on a really good, because they expect a tough game. Don't disappoint them.
We'll get your predictions just after the news, and we'll get the team news as well. We're building up to the kickoff, which is at 7:45.
The Go Radio Football Show with MacklinMotors.com, representing some of the biggest motoring manufacturers across Scotland. Let's go!